Today's video is going to be a little different. I have something to get off of my chest today, and I do feel like it's something I have to be honest about. I am a Ferrari fan.
Tranquillo! Andiamo ormai!
Whoa!
Andiamo,
Help!
andiamo!
Please!
Basta! Scarpe!
Leclerc!
Silenzio! Silenzio!
Forza Ferrari! Grifting. An American tradition as old as apple pie or funny-looking hats, and saying, "This land is my land, and only my land." Grifting exists at every socioeconomic level and every side of the political spectrum. The Democratic coalition has raised millions of dollars from voters, but used over 99% of its funds to pay its executives and major sponsors. Donald Trump brought a Tesla onto the White House lawn and told everyone to buy one on national news. I have seen used car ads that are cooler than this.
I love Tesla. Who else but this guy would design this, and everybody on the road is looking at it.
Very uncool. And last, but certainly not least, I have, in the past, stated that I am apolitical. That was a lie. Super duper uncool. But at least I didn't tell everybody that I'm anti-war and then drag us into another Middle Eastern conflict within 6 months of the presidency, only because I'm not the president. But there does seem to be a rise in grifters that claim to be apolitical, but are actively pushing people over to the right. Specifically, I mean grifters like Andrew Schultz, or Theo Vaughn, or Alex Jones. Obviously that last one is a joke. But when I put these three side by side for you, do you notice any similarities? I'm just gonna take a quick nap while you try to figure that out. Just need to put on my white noise first. Perfect.
I'm up here bashing it because I don't like gay people. I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Exactly. All these social media grifters share three things in common. They're white, they're men, and they have unfettered and unsupervised access to podcasting equipment. It's important to note that these people aren't grifters in the traditional sense of the word. They deceive in more of an ideological manner. They're not like the sketchy guy that has a bunch of miracle cures in his wagon during the Wild West. People like Alex Jones are not snake oil salesmen. Obviously, the oils that he sells don't have snakes in them. And I know, clearly, Alex Jones does not claim to be apolitical, but we can't really talk about conservative grifters without talking about the OG grift daddy. Nobody, and I mean nobody, does grifting like Alex Jones.
Plans in Washington as Trump mulls Iran strike. It's all escalating. Trump privately approved attack plans for Iran. America's military involvement. Trump nears decision on U.S. strikes in Iran. Sources say Israel confirms they believe it's in the next 48 hours. It's all coming up. But before we end this hour, let me tell you something. You've heard RFK Jr. talk about it. You've heard everybody talk about methylene blue.
There is actually something so baller about going on a 5-minute rant about the US involvement in the Middle East, and then without missing a beat, start shilling a chemical that RFK COVID vaccines are worse than Jr. endorses. He is so transparent about his own self-interest that I actually kind of respect him for it. Could you imagine if this was on the actual news? Tonight, we have some breaking news coming out of Yonkers, New York. The US military has been overrun by the zombie horde caused by the Solanum virus. But before we get to that, a word from today's sponsor, Paired. It's officially hot boy summer. And unfortunately for this hot boy, he has no riz. I got anxiety, man. I feel like for me, especially having grown up in a less than emotionally salubrious household, it's always been difficult to maintain long-lasting and healthy relationships. Fortunately, that's why I started using the Paired app with my partner. If I had one, that is. Unless. Paired is an app made for couples who are looking for a fun way to deepen their connection, be vulnerable, and communicate more freely. One of my favorite features about Paired is the questions feature. You and your partner can choose from a plethora of deep, conversation-starting questions that I don't think that I would even know how to ask. Questions like, what's one defense mechanism you learned to adopt in your childhood and why? What's something special or exciting about this birthday compared to the last? And what kind of virtual date would you find exciting and memorable?
If his answer isn't Fortnite, I'm gonna crash out. Oh my god, yay!
The best part about this feature is that you won't actually know what your partner's answer is, so you can both feel free to just speak your mind and there's no pressure on anybody. The Paired app is a great tool for anybody, whether you're in the early talking stages or 10 years deep into a marriage. So whether you're trying to prioritize your partner more, have more meaningful conversations, or even just celebrate your relationship, Paired will be there to help you every step of the way. So if you're ready for hot boy and girl summer, click my link below to get a 7-day free trial and 25% off Paired Premium so you can maintain and deepen your connection with your partner. Thank you to Paired for sponsoring today, and let's get back to the video. Alex Jones is very much a grifter in the truest sense of the word. He is willing to peddle any and all products that give him money. Products like lead-contaminated supplements, silver-infused toothpaste that he claimed could cure COVID, and Turbo Force Plus, which he said is a supplement that will increase mental clarity and performance, but was really just a metric ton of caffeine. So I guess that one's not a complete lie.
Like, who's doing that? You said you got a
the
memo
docs.
on it.
Who said that?
The Tavistock Institute, a lot of those different corporate groups in the 60s and 70s said that was their plan. Okay, well, it goes back to the Carnegie Endowment. After World War I and then World War II, they said that the answer to ending war is to get rid of men. And then so they said, we're going to feminize men. It's like Black Lives Matter says our job is to get rid of the nuclear family.
Right.
And to get black men to become trans. Suppose like if aliens landed on planet Earth, they'd say, we come for your testicles. And then the first thing they say is, we don't want men. Well, what is that? It's something you're being conquered.
Now, what you see here is actually one of the most dangerous right-leaning grifters out there. No, not Alex Jones. Yeah, this guy. Andrew, I love shorts so short that you can see both of my testicles Schultz, is a comedian with a podcast called Flagrant. And I'll be completely transparent with you guys. When his stand-up comedy shows up on my feed, I chuckle sometimes. Ain't nothing wrong with a little chuckle. At least it's not an occasional giggle. See, the reason why Alex Jones is not the most dangerous man here is because despite his rhetoric, Mr. Jones does not portray himself as a rational man. He describes himself as a controversial American journalist, which is a lawyer's way of saying, I am batshit crazy. He is fully aware that the claims that he is making are extremely polarizing, and he caters his content to his core audience of right-wing conspiracy theorists, and evidently left-wing YouTubers who are going way too deep in a dextroamphetamine-fueled rabbit hole. Any rational person would understand that Alex Jones's brain is just two Beyblades rubbing against each other after a mediocre poll. So what scares me about Andrew Schultz is that despite the fact that his fans think he is a level-headed moderate who uses facts and logic to determine his worldview, how is this the appropriate reaction to whatever the hell this is?
We come for your testicles.
I have had stronger reactions to spam email than the reaction that Andrew Schultz gave here. I have observed stronger reactions from people who are actively dissociating than the reaction that Andrew Schultz gave here. I have seen more emotional range in the bag of broccoli that I buy every week but never use than the reaction that Andrew Schultz gave here.
Please, just let me die already.
You see, despite platforming himself as someone who sees both sides, his messaging usually has a very consistent lean towards the right. He lulls his viewers into thinking that he's unbiased, when in actuality, it's clear that he does have bias and holds views that are, what's the best way to put this? A little wucky.
When I was younger, like, Democrats were cool. They were getting their dick sucked in the office. They were like, right? They were like supportive of like hip hop music. They said, do whatever you want. Like, we don't want to be in your bedroom. They were cool with gay people. Like, it was cool to be a Democrat. Now, conservatives got 3 baby mamas. The president got 3 baby mamas. He's getting put left and right. Right? He's cool. He's the one saying, say whatever the you want. So now conservatives have become Democrats.
My name is Kamala Harris, and I support the women's right to choose. My name is Bo Jiden, and I support building up America's infrastructure. My name is Say Like Rayshine, and I was the fastest kid in the 5th grade. I did not think that was gonna work. I want to break down what he said though. Is being woke really that uncool? The gays, they dress well, they take care of their skin, they get laid all the time. That's pretty cool to me. Fighting for social justice and rights. This is me at the No Kings protest. I think it's a cool photo. Kendrick Lamar played at the Super Bowl and fucking hates Andrew Schultz. Objectively, super duper cool. Also, and let me just use his own logic here against him. Considering an overwhelming percentage of young women have voted Democrat in the last 8 years, if you're a young white man who I'm going to assume is the predominant demographic that watches Andrew Schultz, wouldn't it make sense for you to be getting laid more if you were liberal? Unless it's not the women that he wants to get laid with. Oh my god, guys, he's just an ally. It's important to consider that at the end of the day, I am just taking short clips out of his hours and hours of content. And it's easy to paint someone in a bad light just by cherry picking clips. And Andrew has expressed his regrets for summing up his opinions on the woke left through the mature and nuanced lens of a 1980s high school bully. But it does bring to light an important thing to consider when you have the influence and the audience size that Andrew Schulz does. I spent a considerable amount of time trying to develop this thesis and make this whole speech about responsibility of having an audience and platform. But honestly, I think it can be summed up in just one sentence. These people just be saying shit.
The average person that just walks in, they're doing sales at iHeart or whatever, they're walking around and they're going, okay, should I start with my pronouns today? Can I make this joke around these people? Am I allowed to wear these shoes? Are these shoes considered racist? Like, what is going on? Am I culturally appropriating if I get cornrows? Like,
yes, Andrew, that sounds like a good point against wokeness. However, counterpoint, your point looks like a straw man. Because I'm willing to bet that Andrew has rarely, if ever, outside of his shows and social media, ever really encountered the situation that he's describing. I'm certain of this because as someone who is born and raised in California and has worked in both service jobs and corporate America and went to a liberal arts school, I have been corrected about someone's pronouns exactly once in my life. Yes, even while living in the uber conservative city of San Francisco, I have never once been inconvenienced by someone correcting me on their pronouns. And I'm only using inconvenience because Andrew is treating using someone's proper pronouns as an inconvenience. It's really not. An inconvenience is like failing to pick something up 3 times, or locking yourself out of the house and having to walk a mile to your roommate to grab his keys. Not treating someone the way they want to be treated. Because when it really comes down to it, how is it different than just remembering someone's name? You might forget their name sometimes, but as long as you make the effort to try to remember it, people aren't gonna get offended. Hi, my name is Andrew. Hi, Dick Nose. Excuse me, my name is actually Andrew? Really? You don't really look like an Andrew. Look more like a dick nose. Hey, I actually think that's kind of rude. Can you stop calling me that? Why don't you stop oppressing me?
I taught a class at a major university where I'm supposed to give my pronouns at the start of the class. You know what I did?
what?
I said, my name's Chris Morrow. I don't say he, she.
You're proving Andrew's point.
I just handled it in 1 second. I just said Chris Morrow and I kept it moving.
But yeah, but you didn't get challenged. What if one of those little would have been like, excuse me?
Yeah.
What is your pronoun?
Okay, Andrew, but nobody did. That's a made up hypothetical problem. I'm just not sure if a millionaire who surrounds himself with other like-minded millionaires can really speak on the experience of someone who is a normal income-inaire and surrounds himself with normal people. What I'm basically saying is, Andrew should really go touch some grass. But it's not just his anti-woke messaging that I find concerning. It's the way he platforms conservative politicians on his podcast. It's not so much the fact that he does platform them, because he has platformed people like Pete Buttigieg, which was an interview that I actually genuinely enjoyed watching. It's just the difference in how he conducts these interviews.
Keep on hearing conversations about how we're gonna tax people who make a lot of money. How do we tax the people who really are making a lot of money? Like the guys who like send their wives to space for fun? You can't do both. You can send the manufacturing overseas.
Yes.
But at least if we're taxing the revenue of that company that's generating billions of dollars.
Yes.
You would like to believe that that money would come back to the American people, and then we could reinvest in the American people, and then maybe there's other industries that would pop up, and those jobs could transfer from manufacturing to those new ones.
I know these are just a few clips from 4 hours worth of content, but after fully watching both of these podcasts, it's pretty clear to me that Andrew Schulz has actually very interesting conversations about policy and society when he has a liberal guest. While with his conservative guests, he tends to throw more softball questions.
We're going to save our country. Look, we are a nation in decline, whether you like it or not.
I hate hearing that.
I know. I hate
That
it.
hurts me. That
It's
hurts
a-
me.
it's a
As a
horrible-
proud American,
Well, what you
Yeah.
like though is, but we're going to be greater than ever before.
So that's, I think, the messaging that I think that's really nice to hear.
Well, that's my ultimate message. But
yes. I'm not trying to out you, but like there's been people I'm sure that might not have had like legal citizenship that have maybe worked in various businesses. There are people that maybe would like a path to citizenship that I have a lot of empathy for.
You have to start with the criminals.
Agreed.
Okay. You know what's going to happen? You're going to be in the midst of this. Now, you know, Dwight Eisenhower was sort of a moderate, General Eisenhower, and then you had Trump. See, that's a weave. You know, we go off it just
I
for
like
a second.
that. Because now, like, where are we weaving to? I'm into this.
I almost have this feeling that if he were interviewing Batman, he would be pressing him on the ethical conundrums of vigilantism as a way to fight crime. And if he had the Joker on as a guest, he would just be asking him where he got those scars from. You want to know where I got my scars from? I thought we already went over that. Another comedian turned podcaster that shares this trait of amplifying conservative views is Theo Von. Theo Von is an interesting case. He used to be a Bernie bro, but began to empathize with Trump more after the Democratic Party screwed Bernie over. Kind of like how when I find a spider in my house, I burned the entire house down. But while he doesn't claim to be conservative, he still parrots a lot of traditionally conservative views. He even went to the inauguration this year. And despite all of this, his viewers still see him as someone who is non-biased. And here's the thing, it's not that I think Theo Von is truly a conservative. I think he just really likes his Kool-Aid.
Dude, I could tell you a lot of shit, dude. I heard, honestly, Frederick Douglass liked dudes, bro. What? Yeah. And nobody wants to say that. But if you're gonna travel all the way back in time, you gotta smash, you feel me?
I think you'd have an easier time smashing than me.
What about Frederick Douglass?
The black guy?
Smash or pass?
Smash for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think he has a gapey butthole or no?
I heard Frederick Douglass was gay.
Who told you that?
I've heard it from probably almost 15, not 15 people. I've heard it from 4 people.
Where do you go to find the people who tell you that Frederick Douglass is gay?
Theo, please don't make me agree with JD Vance. I want to keep my hate for this administration purely one-dimensional. Overall, I do think that Theo Von, especially in his interviews with more academic guests, does provide a more nuanced view of issues compared to his peers, especially when it comes to issues surrounding men and social equity. When I was trying to find a specific clip within his podcast episode with Scott Galloway, who is an author and marketing professor at NYU, I actually ended up watching mostly the entire thing. And it actually did provide a lot of interesting insights about what it means to be masculine in the modern world and the unique struggles of men who are born in lower socioeconomic classes or just to single mother families. When all of a sudden, I heard this agitating, grating voice.
Oh, well, there's certainly an attack on white males, it feels like. It's not very fair, and I definitely see it as a lot of people feel embarrassed to be white.
Contextually, up until this point, the conversation had been about men.
Until the last 30 years, men have had literally a 2,000-year head start. But because of my advantage, does that mean a 19-year-old male should be punished for it?
Not white men, not black men, not Asian men, not Latin men. Men.
And then if you're white, you can't be like, hey, can we do a white help group? You know what I'm saying? Because suddenly you're racist if you know, there's definitely this like shaming of like being in white skin, you know? And it's like, we're constantly doing that, like reliving the past.
You want a white male support group? How did that work out the last time we tried that? I'm sorry, I'm being facetious here. Let me just put on my cone of shame. But to genuinely answer your question, Theo, there are plenty of groups that are there to support white men. Here's just a couple off the top of my head when I look back on history. Universities, fraternities, football teams, basketball teams, baseball teams, the vast majority of corporate America, the vast majority of cultish America, a lot of churches, in a lot of communities. Any Southern restaurant, bar, school, and public facility before the 1960s. And country clubs. I mean, that one is basically still all white. When I went to one for a work event, I was literally the only minority there. That shit was whiter than a Brandy Melville store on Black Friday. Might as well call it White Friday. The point I'm trying to make here is that racial support groups like the Asian Mental Health Collective and BJLOs exist because of the specific institutional and cultural prejudices that these groups face. And you can feel free to absolutely correct me if I'm wrong, but those same prejudices do not exist for white men. I mean, I guess they can have a support group for not being able to handle the sun.
White people don't get enough credit for having to deal with the sun, man. Put a white in the sun for 30 hours. Put an Irish on a beach. My God, you better pray for them. Let's don't pretend like we don't know what happens to a white in the sun.
And as for Theo Vaughn's statement about there being an attack on white men, I agree with that. White males are being actively deported from this country without a fair trial. White males have had their bodily autonomy removed legislatively. And white males have been consistently racially I was reading the wrong notes. Look, I don't want to invalidate how some white people feel when they are chastised or shamed just for being white. I don't think that's fair for anyone to be judged purely on their race. But that is still a rarity for the average white male. And this is not coming from me. This is coming from my roommate who was born and raised in Napa Valley and is as cookie cutter white as they come.
Easy white chocolate.
And the occasional remark from someone on the far left shaming you because you are white is just not really comparable to the life trajectory altering experiences that minorities have on a very regular basis. It's not an apples to apples comparison. It's more like apples to years of institutional prejudice that hold entire communities back. Well, at least no one shamed us for being Japanese. We are literally in an internment camp. But it is this core belief of white men or just white people in general being attacked that drives a lot of these podcasters' anti-woke sentiments. And it's understandable to a certain degree, especially considering that they built their careers on making edgy and oftentimes controversial jokes. If I was a comedian and everyone on one side was criticizing me for the work that I'm putting out into the world, it would have probably pushed me closer to the side that thought I was cool. But it still comes back to the influence that this type of rhetoric has on their audience, especially considering the fact that they are viewed as non-biased. And it's their proliferation of these fundamentally flawed views that drive other, smaller, more extreme content creators to create more content.
Listen, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the liberals, but if you're not, you should be. These people really think there's some separate faction, that they're fighting for something. They have lost touch with reality. You don't think CERN did anything, huh? It just was this experiment. It was great, fine, worked. CNN is now reporting that most people don't approve of what's going on in our country. Some people have been unalived. Others have resigned. Lightning has now started taking out monuments. Lightning! Taking out specific monuments.
This is editing right here. So what she's talking about is CERN, which is a French abbreviation for the European Council for Nuclear Research. CERN is basically the site of a large Hadron Collider, which is a particle accelerator. And what CERN basically allows us to do is push the frontiers of science and gain a further understanding about particle physics. And I can go into this whole tirade about how ironic it is that she is talking about other parties losing reality, and then just a few videos later, condemn a project that is literally meant to study reality. But honestly, I think all of it can just be summed up in a single meme.
Is it any wonder people are afraid of technology?
Technology!
This is the Right Side Lesbian Art. And she is indeed a piece of work. Artwork, that is. She is an avid LGBTQ+ activist and normal gay? What the fuck is a normal gay?
Us old school gays are announcing our official separation from the alphabet community. It's no more. We're denouncing Pride Month. We're denouncing all of the actions thereof.
Lady, you can't just say thereof. That just doesn't make sense in the context of this. Okay, she's still talking.
So instead of a month, we're just saying, hey, on July 5th, if you can support us by putting an upside down rainbow flag, knowing that we're all Americans and we stand together, no matter who we are.
Yes, happy Pride, guys, where we will all stand together. Unless you're trans, queer, bi, pan, or any of the other alphabet gays. Why can't you just be normal gays? I actually still don't know what that means.
Fight for my rights as a lesbian woman so that I can live a quiet lifestyle and get married and fit in, not to be sucked into the circus land with the clowns. Straight is normal. That's how the world's supposed to live.
So normal gays are just straight people? I would actually argue that being on the spectrum is actually the norm. In the animal kingdom, some studies suggest that over 80% of all mammals observed showed some sort of bisexual behavior. I don't think it's that much of a logical leap to say that translates to humans as well. You and me, baby, are nothing but mammals. So let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. The Spartans literally prepared for their battles by rubbing each other in oil, Diddy style. The Roman Emperor Hadrian, yes, that Hadrian, the Wall Hadrian, was widely known for bringing his twink mistress on campaign with him. And here's a fun fact. In Rome, they didn't make fun of you for being gay. They only made fun of you if you were a bottom. Really puts a new lens on the Roman domination of the Mediterranean, huh?
I'm so sorry I fought for gay rights. I'm so sorry for all the pain and suffering I went through, and had I known y'all were gonna take it this far, I wish I could go back in time and not fight for gay rights and just live a nice, quiet, silent life on my own.
This is what I like to call a tier 1 level of thinking. I got mine. Fuck anybody else. It's the cycle of conservatism. Younger people fight for their rights, and when they finally get them and they're older, they pull up the ladder for anyone else behind them. Tier 2 thinking is realizing that allowing women to vote was once considered a radical leftist idea, and through awareness, activism, and large cultural shifts, it eventually became the norm. Tier 2 thinking is realizing that being gay was once considered a radical leftist ideal, but through awareness, activism, and large cultural shifts, it eventually became the norm. Tier 2 thinking is realizing that people wanting to be called by their proper pronouns is considered a radical leftist ideal. Are you sensing the pattern here yet? And if you haven't noticed, tier 1 thinking is just the nicest way possible to say that she's a fucking doorknob. But it's not just bigoted older white women that have drank the anti-woke Kool-Aid put out by these conservative grifters. There's also younger ones too.
Friendly reminder that a sure sign of mental illness is when someone has pronouns in their bio.
I was kicked out of a class at UCLA for voting for Donald Trump in 2016. Many of my classes were canceled, and Chancellor Jean Block sent out a school-wide email granting students, and I quote, a safe space to mourn the loss of our country. I attended a lecture in one of my classes, which turned into a 3-week crying session, or what they called a safe space. So after 3 weeks of students crying and talking about how Trump is going to ruin our country, the TA finally called on me, as I had been the only one to not speak out. The TA said, Avery, how are you coping with this? You're the only one we haven't heard from. How are you doing? And I answered honestly, revealing that I voted for Trump and that I believe Trump will be a great thing for our country. But I was told to leave that discussion and not return for the remainder of the quarter, as I was a, and I quote, threat to my fellow students' safety.
This is a tough one because on the onset, it does seem like she was treated unfairly. If her side of the story is true, then I'm gonna be completely honest, but I kind of agree with her. I believe that institutions of higher education should encourage and cultivate an environment with multiple different points of view. Because in the real world, you will have to deal with people of all different types and all different backgrounds. What if it turns out that Arthur from accounting is an avid Scientologist and it just so happens to be time for the quarterly report? Have you ever heard about Thetans? Just count the fucking numbers, Arthur. I'm sorry. I don't believe that kicking a student out of a class just because they have a different political viewpoint is a smart or fair decision. It removes any chance of bridging that gap between both sides of the aisle. And it also dilutes the perspectives that the students in the class will have. But that being said, according to her story, it's not like she really showed any interest in learning why the class was distraught, or showed any curiosity about her fellow classmates' point of views. And to add to that, she's also just posting this on social media to publicly mock her classmates. So if she's complaining about not being shown any empathy or sympathy, why the hell does she expect to be shown any herself? Just a thought. We live in a time where almost everything is politicized, and it's almost impossible to not take a side. But I still think that for people with significant platforms, there is still a responsibility to tread very carefully about the messages that they're putting out into the world. Misinformation and bad takes spread like wildfire, and oftentimes nothing is really as simple as these grifters make it out to be. I still don't really know what share of the responsibility we should put on the content creators themselves and what share of the responsibilities we should put into their audiences. I would be very interested to hear all of your takes on it. As for these comedian turned conservative grifters, maybe this isn't even something they're thinking about. Maybe they're regretting their decisions leading up to the 2024 elections. Or maybe they just really like Kool-Aid. I did too, when I was 3. Anyways, if you're still here, thank you so much for watching.
The world is actually run by a dark cabal of capybaras.
Okay, bye.